Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our SAP community live stream today with a very exciting topic, the Triad Playbook for Architecting Secure and Sovereign SAP Landscapes. My name is Larissa Brinkmann. I'm from the SAP Global User Groups organization, and I'm your host today. I'm very glad and happy to have a great speaker today, who is Dr. Michael Blaschke. He's a principal and global SAP Enterprise Architecture Excellence unit. He belongs to this special team who takes care of all the specifics of the modern enterprise architecture aspects. And I'm very happy to have him today, as he has a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge that he is ready to share with us today. With this, over to you, Michael.
Thank you, Larissa, for the warm introductory words. Welcome, everyone, to today's live webcast. I'm Michael Blaschke, a principal and an enterprise architect in SAP's Global EA Excellence team. Today, I want to introduce you to what we call the Trust Triad, which is a convergence of enterprise architecture, cybersecurity, and sovereignty into one integrated discipline. This session brought directly on work we've been doing in our sovereignty and security architecture program, SSA, if you will, so sovereignty and security architecture within our global EA excellence team. We've been developing practical patterns and a playbook that shifts security and sovereignty considerations into early stage architecture decisions, and not only late testing exercises early before go live. So whether you're an enterprise architect, a security officer, or responsible for cloud strategy, I want to give you concrete patterns you can take back to your organizations. Let's get started immediately. Before we deep dive into our today's content, this is not the first session on enterprise architecture. There has already been a 4-part webcast series on topics like debunking architecture myths in S/4HANA modernizations, or architecting innovation platforms for your companies, or how to converge the ambition to implement AI in your organization and modernize towards S/4HANA, and cloud extensibility as one of the dimensions of a clean core. So there is ample content already available on YouTube and via the user group. Today, we really focus on one of the core topics of our global EA excellence team, that is how to architect secure and sovereign SAP landscape. All right, so let me take one moment to tell you about this program behind today's content. So everything I have shared and will share comes from our Sovereignty and Security Architecture program, the SSA program, within this global team. Our objective is straightforward: develop, validate, and publish reusable architecture patterns that then help you as user organizations, but also as partners, to navigate sovereignty, security, and compliance requirements with confidence and speed early on from the outset of a architecture program or of an SAP modernization. So we are producing an SSA playbook with reference patterns, the Trust Triad framework you see today then really, and it entails deployment models for sovereign cloud and hybrid scenarios, AI governance guidance, and to validate all of this through lighthouse engagements with real customers in regulated markets. We currently work in 4 active work streams, that is content, where we develop and publish the playbook, external engagements, where we co-create with customers and partners and present results at user groups like the German-speaking or the American SAP user group. Then network is a work stream where we align cross-functionally with security and compliance teams in SAP globally. And ultimately, the tool chain integration, where we're building advisory capabilities into tools like LeanIX in our tool chain. So if any of this resonates with your challenges, we would welcome the conversation and feel invited to reach out to me. All right, but here's what we'll cover today. Actually, first, I'll introduce the trust triad concept, what it is and why it matters. Then we look at the why from the perspective of real CIO demands and regulatory drivers. In the what section, I show you the bidirectional value between architecture and security/sovereignty, so how each discipline transforms the other. And then ultimately, most importantly, in the how, we look at practical operationalization through the SAP Enterprise Architecture Framework. And finally, I share what our SSA program is ultimately delivering and how you can engage with us. But at first, before the why, let's start with the concept itself. So let me start with the core concept of this program and our thinking on this. The trust triad is the interdependent convergence of three disciplines, as you can see: enterprise architecture, IT security, and digital sovereignty. Trust in digital systems, in our thinking, doesn't come from any one of these three disciplines alone. You need structural coherence from architecture, protective assurance from security, and sovereign self-determination over your technology assets, data, and operations. So architecture tells you how you're organized, security tells you how you're protected, and sovereignty tells you how you remain self-determined. And when all three align early on and in a unified way, trust emerges as a property of the digital system you're architecting, not just as a slogan in your annual report, really. So now what happens at the intersections is where it really gets practical. When you combine architecture and security, you get secure by design architecture. So zero trust patterns, threat modeling embedded in solution architecture, for example. When you combine architecture and sovereignty, you get governed autonomy. So residency-aware topologies, vendor-neutral reference architectures that ensure you're not locked in. And when you combine security and sovereignty, you get sovereign security. So in jurisdiction, key management, controlled access pathways where only personnel within your jurisdiction can access your data. But here's the thing, when all three converge, you get trust. So complete trust in your SAP landscape emerges when all three disciplines converge. So architecturally coherent, demonstrably secure, and verifiably self-determined. That is the ultimate goal from our perspective. That should be the ultimate ambition of IT programs or projects in themselves, but in particular SAP programs, as they hold ERP at the core, kind of the digital brain of your organization, which you want to trust by any means, whatever it takes. Before I share my own perspective, let me start with voices from the field. So these are direct quotes from IT executives I've collaborated with and I met at user group meetings, for example, at the DSAG annual conference. So a healthcare CIO says, our security team works in isolation from architecture. We need them at the table for every major design decision, not just penetration testing at the end. Think about that. Security brought in too late means your architecture is already locked. Or an IT director from financial services said, the architects design beautiful systems, then security says half of it violates compliance. So we need one unified approach from day one. Or another example, a manufacturing scenario says, we spent months on an enterprise architecture management framework like TOGAF that never mentioned security. Then we failed our audit. So these aren't isolated complaints. They represent a systemic failure of how we as an IT community and also as a firm traditionally organize architecture and security as separate disciplines. The question to me isn't whether we need their integration, it's how we achieve that those disciplines unify to reach the ultimate goal, that is trust in our SAP landscape. So now into the why even deeper. Here's the fundamental problem. No single discipline is sufficient. Architecture without security gives you beautifully designed systems that might remain vulnerable to threats. Architecture without sovereignty means you're well designed but potentially locked into dependencies in a jurisdiction or geography you cannot control. Security without architecture means you're protecting piecemeal, system by system, without structural coherence. Security without sovereignty means you might be secure, but your keys or your data could be subject to foreign jurisdiction. And sovereignty without either security or architecture means good intentions without the means to implement or enforce them really through architecture. So this is why the convergence isn't really optional in my thinking. It's the only path to genuine organizational trust by your organization, but also by your customers, legislators, regulators, partners, that your SAP stack can be genuinely trusted. And the fundamental shift our program and our thinking advocates is moving security and sovereignty left in the life cycle. So instead of security and architecture being a gate right before go live during testing, it becomes a continuous consideration from the very first design decision. There are 4 practical mechanisms. First, treat security as a metric, not a burden. So architects naturally optimize for clean systems, give them a security score, and watch them compete to improve it. Then second, deploy security monitoring on sandbox and deployment systems. This might create an early warning system where architects learn from issues without the pressure of production audit findings. Third, then, implement drift detection. So when the implemented system deviates from the architecture blueprint, alert immediately, and don't let small workarounds become permanent risks. And fourth, ultimately, fact-based architecture review board. So replace opinion-driven debate with dashboards showing actual misconfigurations, open endpoints, unencrypted storage. So facts, not feelings, really, in the debate from day one, moderated by architects. So this is the shifting left philosophy that our SSA program is seeking to operationalize across SAP's advisory practices. Now let's move to the what. What is actually in this trust triad and what it actually means to design for trust. Yeah? So let's talk about the SAP Shared Responsibility Model, because this is where misunderstanding creates real risk in my daily experience. The model has 3 layers. At the top, the customer is responsible for their data, their custom application, their account configuration, and their operational processes. In the middle, there's a joint responsibility zone covering identity management, observability, security and compliance, and high availability. And at the bottom, as a SAP and the infrastructure provider handle runtime, services, and data center management. Now, there are 4 persistent myths I encounter in the field when it comes to these responsibilities and who has which responsibility. First myth, SAP takes care of everything. No, SAP provides security of the cloud, infrastructure, hypervisor, physical security. You are responsible for security in the cloud. So your configuration, your roles, your code. Then second myth, default settings are secure. They're not. They're optimized for quick onboarding, not maximum hardening in the tightest sense. The third myth, the cloud connector is a firewall. Yeah? It's an application gateway. If a BTP app is compromised and your cloud connector always allows broad access to S4HANA, that tunnel becomes a direct path for an attacker. And fourth, security verified at go live is sufficient. It's not. The platform changes weekly. A dependency that was saved at go live can be vulnerable a week later. So the truth is security must be continuous from day zero. Now, more on the what, starting with what architecture does for security. So in every one of those security domains, security and sovereignty domains, architecture provides really improving or transformative value even. Yeah? For access and identity, architecture gives you standardized role models and federated identity patterns. So design once, deploy everywhere, for example. For data protection, architecture provides data flow mapping and classification frameworks that make privacy by design achievable. For network security, architecture thinking gives you security zones and standardized segmentation that limit lateral movement. For application security, you get secure development patterns and API standards embedded in your CI/CD pipelines. For governance and compliance, architecture creates control frameworks that map business processes to technical controls with automated monitoring. And for cloud and hybrid, architecture defines security boundaries and responsibility matrices. So the pattern here to me is whether complexity makes security difficult, wherever complexity makes security difficult, so multiple systems, hybrid environments, distributed controls, so wherever complexity makes security really difficult and our contemporary landscapes are complex, then architecture is not just helpful in terms of designing an effective landscape, but it's really essential to also keep the landscape secure. Yeah, and now ultimately the most important section, how? How can we unify those three disciplines to achieve the emerging property of trust we all urge for and aim for so deeply? Yeah? And we operationalize sovereignty across three axes, first and foremost. There is data sovereignty, so customers maintain control over where data resides, who can access it, how it's processed. Controls include regional deployment, encryption with customer-managed keys, access mediation, and data classification. Then second, technological sovereignty. Customers retain control over technology choices. Yeah? Controls include open standards, API-first integration, ensuring portability and reversibility, and clean core architectures that decouple regulatory logic into really side-by-side services. And third pillar is operational sovereignty. So customers include customers retain control over who operates their systems and from where. So controls include in-jurisdiction personal, just-in-time access that's auditable, sovereign uplift controls, and fully auditable runbooks. And this three-axis model is central to how we help customers navigate security requirements in our advisory practice. So by now you learned how SAP approaches security, that is the shared responsibility model, and making very clear from the outset what the default responsibility model is and who carries which responsibility. And here on this slide, you now understand also the three-axis sovereignty model. So what we think about when it comes to designing for and reaching sovereign landscape. And now the ultimate question is, of course, how do you operationalize these ambitions, of designing an effective shared responsibility model, but also designing for effective sovereignty along these three axes. And we do so through the SAP Enterprise Architecture Framework, EAF, SAP Enterprise Architecture Framework. So the program we're running adapts now for security and sovereignty. The key principle is we're not creating a separate security architecture framework. We're extending the existing SAP Enterprise Architecture Framework, which holds these 5 dimensions. So we are extending this existing framework to inherently include security and sovereignty dimensions across all 5 pillars. Let's take methodology. Your design forums include security from the start with a decision criteria catalog that incorporates risk assessment for both security and sovereignty. Or let's take reference architecture. So your patterns already embed security and sovereignty controls for BTP and hybrid landscape. Let's take tooling, which in the SAP ecosystem, of course, is the integrated tool chain. So your compliance validation checks both architectural standards and security compliance automatically, ideally. Let's talk about the 4th dimension, enterprise architecture practice. So your organization's architecture practice. So your architects have cross-training and a competency model for operating at the security sovereignty intersection beyond more traditional architecture consideration. And ultimately, architecture services. So those consultants that have you design or architect effective SAP landscape. So for services, you have defined it. You have a defined advisory framework then for sovereignty posture assessment, for example. So the wrapper at the bottom here on the slide is critical. Integration of security and sovereignty is not a 6th dimension in our architecture work. It's the principle or one principle that now has to run through all 5. And maybe something to take with you, which you can then really implement starting next Monday or even today. So 4 concrete governance steps for you to implement the trust triad in your organization, be it customer or partner organization. Step 1 is establish architectural foundations. So define your principles incorporating sovereignty from the start. Model your target architecture with sovereignty and security constraints. Design for composability and exit. So you must always able contractually to leave jurisdiction without implications on your SAP landscape. Step 2, embed security throughout. Apply the CIA triad to every decision. Implement zero trust architecture as a default. Conduct threat modeling for every building block. Moving to step 3, enforce sovereign controls. So classify your data by jurisdiction. Define residency requirements explicitly, not implicitly. Implement jurisdictional access pathways, so only authorized personnel in the right jurisdiction can access sensitive systems. And ultimately, step 4, align and govern the triad. So your architecture review board needs a sovereignty mandate alongside its security mandate. Implement sovereignty fitness functions, so automated checks that continuously validate compliance, and maintain a continuous compliance monitoring because the landscape changes constantly. So these are really like 4 nudges or governance steps you can immediately think on working on. And with that, I want to now already go to the key takeaways. And let me leave you really with 6 key takeaways from our program's work and from today's presentation. So first, trust is an emergent property. You cannot buy it. You cannot bolt it on. Trust emerges from the alignment, in our thinking, it emerges from the alignment of architecture, security, and digital sovereignty. Second takeaway, convergence must be deliberate. So the convergence of those 3 disciplines, either in your IT function in general, or at least in your SAP program, won't happen by accident. Yeah, you really need to deliberately bring architects, security experts, and sovereignty experts together and find a way to make them part of the architecture decision from day 0, even during a discovery phase, and not only close or early before penetration testing, for example. Then third, sovereignty is an ability. It's not authority. So it's not about doing everything yourself. It's about retaining the capacity to act autonomously when you need to. Fourth, SAP gives you a practical framework across 3 axes when it comes to sovereignty, so data, technology, and operational sovereignty. Fifth, seek to shift security and sovereignty left in the project lifecycle. So don't wait for go-live audits to discover that your architecture has fundamental issues, either in security and or in sovereignty. Bring security and sovereignty into architecture advisory from day 1. And 6, your architecture review board, if there is one, needs a sovereignty mandate too. So in these architecture review board meetings or reviews, or if the architecture review board reviews architecture and security but not sovereignty, you already have a governance gap. So really seek to evaluate all 3 disciplines. Yeah, so those are kind of the key takeaways I would love you to take with you. Yeah, let me conclude with reiterating that we ambitiously and forcefully work on what I just scratched on here in the presentation, our sovereignty and security architecture program in 4 work streams. One is content, so developing the actual playbook, how to operationalize the trust triad. Then we validate the content in external engagements with customers and partners. We also build an SAP-wide network to amplify and promote the content, and we seek to integrate the most precious pieces of our work into the tool chain. So if that resonates with you, feel free to reach out. Yeah, with that, thank you for consuming not only today's nudge, if you will, but also considering additional content if you're interested in more enterprise architecture thinking. And with that, thank you all for joining today. I hope this session gave you concrete patterns and a clear framework for bridging architecture, security, and sovereignty together in your organization. Our SSA program actively seeks collaboration with customers and partners, whether you're facing sovereignty requirements in a current transformation, whether you need architecture patterns for regulated markets, or whether you want to validate your security posture against the shared responsibility model. We welcome the conversation, really. Yeah. Reach out to your SAP Enterprise Architect or connect with me directly via email or LinkedIn. And now I stay on for the Q&A. Bring your questions. I'm happy to go deeper on any of the topics we covered today.
Right. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you for this very thorough guidance to such an important topic, for bringing all these aspects together and also opening new ways of looking at the enterprise architecture. And to our audience, now is the moment to bring up your questions. Please use the live chat functionality on YouTube. You need to be signed in order to post the question. So, and as we give you minutes for those who would like to state a question, I would like to ask Michael, as he have mentioned the sovereignty and security architecture program several times today. It seems to be very important, interesting, and structured program. And but for the audience and for those who work in the enterprise architecture space, and especially for those who are interested to be part of this program, probably also communicate proactively or contribute proactively. So how these persons, this might be, of course, customers, partners, or colleagues, or even newbies, probably somebody who is just considering the working path of enterprise architect. So how all these people can join the program, and whether they all will find their space there. Michael, I think you're on mute.
Unmuted now, classic. Yeah, fair question, and thank you for that question. Yeah, so the sovereignty and security architecture problem really seeks to close a white spot in architecting the most effective SAP landscape, and first and foremost in really architecting or optimizing for trust as an emergent property, and not just for either an effective architecture or effective security or effective sovereignty. Yeah, so we really think those three disciplines need to unify to really architect and optimize for trust in your SAP landscape. There is the opportunity to contribute in those 4 work streams you see here on the slide. So number 1, content is focused on thought leadership and actually operationalizing this kind of opinion piece of thought leadership, if you will. I could present it, operationalize it in a playbook so that it can really be used in SAP modernizations. Second is external engagement, where we really co-create and validate developed contents together with customers and partners, and then also bring it on stage at user group, for example, or in such webcasts here, where we report on if and to what extent such a playbook was of help. Third is a network. This is really seeking to identify multipliers or ambassadors within SAP that carry the trust triad and the playbook into the ecosystem globally. I mean, although we are a global team, our reach is limited, and we need ambassadors and multipliers that scale it into the whole SAP ecosystem globally. And ultimately, for the tool chain and the LeanIX lovers among you, of course, we at least have the strong working hypothesis that some reflection of sovereignty and security requirements in and through LeanIX and through the tool chain will be of help for any SAP modernization out there. So these are really the 4 paths you can currently contribute, and you're warmly invited.
All right, thank you very much for this. I currently can't see questions in the chat, but as this asset will stay on YouTube and will be available for replay, it is of course important to have contact data of Michael. if you feel like that you would like to address some specific question or some specific engagement idea, please contact Michael directly. The contact information will be available in the PDF that will be available in the description to this video. And of course, stay with us, set up notifications for the new live streams that we will be scheduling soon. And we will be very much interested to exchange with you and interact with you as part of the SAP community. With this, thank you very much, Michael, for this great presentation. Thank you to our audience for being with us, and we definitely will work on the expanding the community of enterprise architects and, of course, promoting this great program that is covering very important aspects of the modern enterprise architectures. With this, thank you very much and bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you for having me.